So for those of you who are just tuning in to a Millie event for the first time, Millie is a company that is dedicated to building a global community for international school students. And we host webinars and panels just like this one every weekend on all sorts of different topics. So basically, here's how today's panel is going to look. We have some pre-prepared questions that we're going to go through with our panelists, but feel free to submit your own questions. And the first 45 minutes, we'll go through the pre-prepared questions, but after that, we can let our panelists answer the questions and do like a little Q&A. And the questions can be general questions for everybody, or if you want to ask a specific panelist, just put their name in your question and we can direct it straight at them. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So we will just start with a little bit of an introduction from each panelist. If you guys could just say your name, your job, what university you studied at, and then maybe like one small fun fact about yourself, that would be great.
Hi everyone, so my name is Yolanda. I went to After University in Cape Town. Essentially it's a drama school, then they have a business school inside it. So that's kind of how that works. I have a BCom in digital technology. That's the specialization I have. And fun fact, I speak French. Oh, I also work at Three-Sided Cube, by the way. I forgot that part.
Hi, I'm Shruti. I currently work at Amazon as a UX designer. I went to the University of Washington in Seattle and I studied informatics with a focus in human-computer interaction. One fun fact about me is I grew up in Africa.
Hello, I'm Matthew. I live in Cape Town. I went to AFTA. I have a BCom in business innovation and entrepreneurship. Fun fact about me, I work and study full time at the same time. I don't know.
Hi everyone, my name is Julia and I'm a UI UX artist at Labs right now. It's a gaming company in Seattle. And I also went to University of Washington and I graduated last year. And I'm currently in Seattle, Washington. And I'm from Taipei, Taiwan. And fun fact, I also went to an international school and it was a Canadian one in China.
Great, thank you guys. Okay, so we'll start off with our first question. If you could all give a 30-second description of your job, just so everybody maybe understands a little bit about UI UX jobs.
Okay, so essentially I'm a UX designer at Three-Sided Cube. So what that means, well, essentially Three-Sided Cube actually to begin with, the consulting agency, but they very much deal with tech for good. So it's very much getting clients and then very much building applications and websites. So the way in which I like to explain UX for me is very much the structural, the foundational base of what is that you see. So essentially we do the skeleton and then people do the design and then builders actually build it. So I'm like the first step of building the prototype essentially. And yeah, and having it become real.
So I work on the Amazon.com website and the Amazon shopping app that I think most people know. And essentially my job consists of designing the actual way in which it looks, and then working with product managers who are basically essentially the people who kind of define the business vision, the business value, and closely with software engineers to take it from just design to making sure that we meet business needs, and then it goes into production with engineering, and then you usually see it launched on the website and app.
I currently work for a social impact startup called Clomo, which deals with alerts and when you're in an emergency, such as if you have a heart attack, for instance, and you need to alert someone, you can have a click of your button on your phone and it would work. My role there is I'm head of design, so I focus more on UX design of both the website and the application. I'm also in charge of app development and web development. But my main goal there really is to monitor customers and see how they use the platform rather than what they say about it.
Yeah, so I work in a game company, like I said, and so we have like 10 plus or almost 20 games from our company, mobile games. And I mainly work on the UI of the game interfaces, and I also work with game designers to work on the UX or the experience of the players. And I'm also doing research for the games just to test like the usability of the games and observing user behaviors and their preferences.
Thank you. Okay, so if you guys could answer, did you always want to go into a career with UI UX design, or did you stumble upon it, or how did you get to where you are?
I think for the longest time, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, the main things I really enjoyed were just both economics and sociology. So when I was going to decide where I wanted to go to university and what I wanted to do, I wasn't too sure. So that's why I kind of chose the route of just doing something that I found a bit more enjoyable, focusing on business. So I signed up in South Africa, studying at AFTA, and within their course, being surrounded based on business innovation and then digital technology. That whole sense very much struck like a chord, like struck a nerve with me. So not in the best way to say it, yeah. So then I ended up going there, and then first year, first project, we were kind of asked to make dating site, so like speed dating, and I was in charge of design, and I was just kind of thrown into it, and it very much mixed both sociology and economics for me in terms of having to think of the business goals, very much then designing, and then creating something that people can use that actually creates value. So it's very nice to see that and be able to do that and have it come out in a true format. So it's very much a thing of being able to design and think within a box that you create and you choose, but like the possibilities are very much infinite. So that's very much how I got into UX. So it was nothing that I ever knew existed very much before that. So it's very fun.
For me, basically growing up, I always saw that technology was inaccessible for a lot of people in the volunteer opportunities that I was a part of. And then I, on a whim, applied to mainly computer science programs. And then I stumbled across informatics, and I wasn't even really sure what it was, but it just spoke to me. And I went to college, and I thought that I would end up in software engineering, where I'd be coding my life away. And while my degree did consist of a lot of coding, I stumbled across a random class that I took in college, and then I fell in love with UX. So I didn't always know I wanted to do a career in UI UX, but I always knew that I wanted to do something creative in the technology field, and UX fit right in the middle of that. And I just think it's beautiful that we are able to come up with designs and solutions and really think about the user and the customer in the technology field so I also just randomly stumbled upon it, and it was one of the best things that happened to me.
So before I started my degree, I had no idea user experience and user interface designers existed. I always just thought that it was part of the process that a developer does. But during the degree, as our degree, we had to sort of start startups, basically build startups from scratch every year. And from the first year onwards, I was also involved, part of the design of the team. We had to design the platform, go through the whole process of the user journey from the beginning, the user stories, use cases. And I sort of fell in love with UX, not necessarily UI at that stage, but user experiences and how users like platforms and what makes them like them. And that switched the gear on for the rest of my degree over the past 3 years, where I've worked as the freelance UX designer. And yeah, so to answer the question, yeah, I never knew it existed, and I would have never thought it would be my best skill at this stage.
Yeah, for me, so growing up, I have been like interested in art. And since high school, like my high school gave me a lot of opportunity to explore different subjects. So I also learned about like graphic design, and I had exposure to VR, like tech, yeah, just media or uh, using like Adobe products to make art and stuff. And I was interested in the design path since like I think middle school. Just wanting to make art more functional instead of just being like creative or being like a artist. Um, so because of that interest, I went to like an industrial design summer camp at our Center College of Design in California when I was in grade 10. And yeah, that was a great experience, but I didn't really want to go into like just one art school. So I chose UW later. And so entering UW, I know they have a design program. I really want to get in. And I wanted to do industrial design at first before I enter the school. But they have like three programs: a graphic, industrial, interaction. Interaction is more of UX UI. And so I know like industrial and graphic, but then like the middle route would be like interaction. And I also didn't know like it was an option. But after taking a class called Design Methods, it talks about like design thinking and the process of how you think for the users and like create solutions for their needs. And I really love that like thinking process. So I chose interaction design as my major later.
Great, thank you guys. It's really interesting to hear how you all got to where you are. If you were giving advice to a high school student about what degree may enhance their knowledge or make them the most appealing for an employer for a UI UX design career, what advice would you guys give?
If I'm being 100% honest with you, I'm not sure, because essentially within the team of UX designers we have now, we have all very different backgrounds. So then I have my BCom, my lead has a degree in project, well, he's coming from a project management background. And then the other guy on my team, he has a degree in engineering. And then the design team, they have very much, well, the UI team very much have graphic design, like esque type of degrees. So it's a very interesting dynamic that you can kind of come in from any background if you choose to understand the mechanics of it and how everything works in that way. So I think it's very much a personable thing that you have to decide for yourself what best suits you and how you best get there. So everyone's route to getting there is not the same. So it's very up to you.
For me personally, I would recommend getting a degree in either like interaction design or like there's design programs in many schools. Other than that, I actually really recommend even doing like computer science or like informatics with a focus in specific HCI. You don't even have to have that focus, but just look in the curriculum of those degrees if they have any like UX intro classes or anything, even if you can dip your toes in it to kind of get like the concepts down. I think it would be useful. For me personally, having a more technical background is incredible because I'm able to really communicate with my engineers and nail down some things and like talk about technical feasibility for my designs. And it really like, because I can question like, hey, are you sure that tech stack won't work? Like, so I think for me that was very useful. It made it made like my knowledge stronger in that sense. But with that being said, you don't have to do a technical degree. I know some designers on my team who just did like graphic design or design. So it's really up to you and what your interests are. And I would also like to say, I know a lot of people like Yolanda mentioned who just kind of come from really different backgrounds. There's also boot camp options. Like I know General Assembly has like a UX design. So if you end up studying something else and you still want to pursue UX, there's a lot of boot camps that are available. So I think that a lot of people can end up in UX with completely different backgrounds.
To be honest, I think the question was answered quite comprehensively, but one thing I would add, I would say, I think it doesn't really matter what you study. If you come across something and you end up really liking it or passionate about it, you can learn about it, whether it's through another degree or you add it on top, or whether it's through graphic design. For instance, some people might look at it through a business point of view. Some people might look at it through a technical point of view. Some people might have a different perspective. And I think that all counts. So if you do come across it and you're doing something totally, completely different, I think you can still have a successful time, a career as a UX designer if you choose. This other company I'm looking at, for example, two of them are lawyers who are now UX designers, and one of them was self-taught. So it doesn't really matter in my opinion, just as long as you set your heart to it, your mind to it, and you're passionate about it, you can become anything.
Yeah, for me, just speaking from experience, or like at least from UW, I think there's a spectrum of like, because there are different types of UX jobs. There's like UI design focused, or there's UX or UX research or UX writing. So it depends on like which route you want to go in. Like the degrees can like be different. So I think there's a spectrum of like being the like most creative to like more technical. So most creative would be like graphic design to like my program interaction design, and then to HCDE or HCI, and then in informatics, and then computer science. And I also know people with a psychology background going to UX research, and a lot of them have like master degrees or PhDs. So you have to study more if you want to go into the research route. Yeah, it's not like necessary, but like I heard like people suggest that from industry standard. And I think just I recommend those programs just because like they prepare you better for building a portfolio, which is really needed if you want to apply for a job instead of doing on your own. Yeah.
Thank you. If you guys would be able to tell us about a day in your life, what does your role consist of? Maybe like a small task you do every day, or how your hours look, just so students can kind of have an idea about what it's like to be a designer.
So at Three-Sided Cube, it's actually 5 hours away from me, so I'm working remotely for now. So our days either start between 8:30 and 9:30. You very much choose when you want to start your day. So Mondays, 9:30, we have a stand-up meeting, and then we also very much have creative review throughout our day. So that's a session for both the UX designers and the UI designers, and then client strategists, and then also some PMs to kind of come together, talk about the projects we have going on. If we have any queries or would like any advice from anyone, we very much take that time to help each other out and see outside of like our own peripheral and see what other people have to say. And then very much you have your own focus time, where then you can focus on your own projects, whether that be like doing wire flows, gathering materials in terms of seeing what you can do for user testing, possibly speaking, and then very much preparing like your pitch decks for then when you go speak to clients. So essentially our days are mixed up of very much Google Meet sessions with each other, creative review, focus time where you focus on your own work, and then very much meeting with PMs and strategists to just very much speak about the client, what it is that you have to do, what it is that you need to get done. And then we kind of round off at like either 4:30 or 6, depending on where you choose to work. But the way in which like they've kind of spaced out of our day for us is that 6 hours of like actual work, like tangible work. Then we have an hour and a half out for meetings. So that's how we structure our day.
For me, no day is the same. It's completely different. So I work 9 to 5. So I can give you a random typical day in my life. So I wake up, and then I go to, well, it's remote, but sometimes I go into the office because I have that option. And so I kind of have a to-do list of everything that I want to get done that day. And so my day could consist of, I could have design reviews with leadership, which is essentially sometimes it can be like really high ups. I've had like leadership reviews with like the VP of our org, really, really high up, like 3 down to like Andy or Jeff Bezos, like really high up. So it's like high stakes. I have a lot of tech reviews with my engineers to make sure that my designs are technically feasible. I have product reviews with my product team to make sure that, we're hitting the business goals and needs. I also have been tasked with coming up with like a 3-year plan for some of the features I work on. So we call this vision work. And it's a huge project where you're like envisioning a completely new future for this feature. And yeah, I like probably have like 10 pages on like my design file, just iterating and coming up with actual design. Sometimes I have like heads down time, maybe an hour or two a day where I'm actually designing on, I don't know if you've heard of Figma or Sketch or InVision, but these are just prototyping tools that you use to kind of come up with how those screens look that you see. Other than that, like right now I'm planning a user testing that I'm trying to plan a usability study that I'm working on to test my designs to verify that customers understand what we're trying to solve. I also, because Amazon's a huge company, we have something called office hours. So sometimes I have to go to UX writing office hours or to make sure like the text that I'm using in my designs makes sense. Sometimes I have to go in for accessibility office hours to make sure my designs are accessible. And so like there's so many different elements. No day is the same. Some days I'm in meetings for like 6 hours. Some days I have no meetings. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
My days, every day is different. Some days it's more work orientated at the startup I work for. For instance, currently now, most of my time is based on it. So I can spend up to 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours on it. But it depends really. Sometimes like because the startup I work for is almost at a funding stage. So sometimes people would want to put pressure on you. So we tend to work more some days and some not. And at the same time, I'm also studying full time. So I wouldn't advise it. Some days look like 16-hour work days. But so if I would do my actual job as a UX designer, it might be after 5 p.m. to like 1 in the morning, for instance, on some days. So it's very, yeah. I don't think I answered that right.
Hi. So yeah, for me, my company is have long work hours. So I work 10 hours a day, including 1 hour lunch break. And right now we do 3 days in the office, but we're going to be fully in person soon. And in the morning, 9:30, we'll do like an art scrum where like the art team come together and just talk about what you're gonna work on today. And I mostly work on like UI for games. And so like game designers will come to me and be like, oh, I want to get this done or I want to make this update. And we will talk through it either through meetings or just through messages to get things built for the next version, next build of the game. And I also work on like usability testing. So writing questions for that and sending to designers and discuss with them and then sending out. And also after that, like analyze it and write a report and send it to everyone. So we can all improve the game as a team.
Thank you, guys. If you could answer, what do you think is the most challenging aspect of your role? That can be anything. It doesn't need to be specifically work orientated, but just anything that is challenging about your job.
Challenging. I feel like for me personally, it's that essence of everything is an iteration. So as much as I'd like to get things perfectly done like the first time, it's never gonna happen for me. And I had a conversation with my PM about this, and he was like, listen, like it's a thing of over time, you're gonna get better. But like you're probably not gonna like what you do like for the first few months because you're just so new to it and you're learning everything as you go along, right? And it's the sense of I want to be great all the time, but it's just not going to happen. And you have to be okay with learning and just keep on doing the same thing over and over again to kind of get to the point where like it's a natural rhythm and you know what you're doing. But in that sense of just wanting to be perfect and have everything designed optimally isn't always something that is going to happen. So I think that's one thing I'm having to learn how to deal with, just to learn how to be less self-critical in the whole sense of it, and just more understanding that this is a process. Same way like design is a process, this is a process for me too. So I have to be okay with that.
I think for me, the hardest thing is when you work at a big company and you're working on a very mature product that billions of people use. A lot of my role, I think the biggest challenge is getting alignment. So if I'm working on a single like design, I need to get alignment from like 10 to 15 people before like, it can be like, okay, let's go into building this out and launching it. So I think like, I guess like, yeah, it's definitely a frustration of mine. But I think that the way in which I kind of deal with it is I've learned over time, imposter syndrome is a real thing, as Yolanda said, like when you first start. But I've learned to better like speak up in meetings, speak up and like push back on things that I don't agree with. So it's definitely a challenge because a lot of the times, at least with the tech team, I'm the only woman in the room. There's like 10 like men who've probably been in the industry way longer than I have. So I've just learned to be confident. I've learned to build a really good relationship with my engineers and product team because I work with them a lot. And I'm really grateful that they've been welcoming in that sense. And you need to learn to advocate for yourself because no one's going to do it. Like if you want something, you need to speak up. And I think at first it can be really challenging to do that. But now I just unapologetically ask, I'm shamelessly asking like, hey, I need to get this done. I need this for my career growth. Like you need to speak up. And I think at a big company, you can kind of get lost in the sea and like, people aren't going to be chasing after you like, oh, here you go. I'm going to hand you this. Like, if I want to get promoted, I need to advocate for myself. So my biggest challenge is probably that, but I would say it's a great skill to have in general in life. So just always advocate for yourself wherever you can. And yeah.
On my end, I just think it's alignment with everyone in a business. Because one of the main roles is sometimes you would have a point where you have finished something, let's say a project or a part of a project, and you want to show it to, let's say, your boss or a colleague, and they are simply not always available. And sometimes it gets really frustrating and it delays progress, I think. And one thing I have had to learn is patience, even though there is a deadline. But that has been a main challenge for me, especially this year and last year as well in per se a startup, which we did in the degree. Patience is the biggest challenge I've had.
Yeah, I totally agree with what has been mentioned, like iterations and patience. I think for my role, it's like really hard because I get feedback from different parties. Like sometimes it could be data analysts or game designers or different leads or managers, or even my CEO. Like they will give feedback on like how certain things should look or how the function should be like. So like to balance like who to listen to and be patient through the iteration process, I think is pretty challenging because a lot of our products are still in the exploration process stage. So things can get like ambiguous and I don't know like what to do sometimes, or there are a lot of changes to make. And I think another thing is, so there are some like bigger games that have been already that are working already in the market, like they're making profits, but then their UI or UX might not be the most ideal. But we have to slowly change the product to make sure that like you don't hurt the profit. So like consider the business side and the market side, but at the same time, like trying to improve the UI UX it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience.
Thank you. So since we just did the most challenging part, now we'll kind of flip it and say what is the most favorite part of your role? And it can be anything again, just the best part.
The best, I honestly, for me, I think is very much like the mission statement of Three-Sided Cube. And it's very much that whole idea of tech for good. So it's very much a thing of, I've always wanted to be in a place where technology wasn't destructive because I always have seen it that way and I've placed it that way. So in terms of actually working at a place where we're doing something that's actually good for the world, for the environment, whichever capacity that is very empowering to know that good things can still be done. And that it's not just something that people say like as a like, I don't know, just as an initiative to get people on board, but like it's very much what we actually do. And in the setting in which we're doing it, it's thing of like people bring their dogs to the office, their cats, like whatever. It's like I know it's a very unhealthy thing to call like your colleagues, like your family, but it's very much that small, intimate feeling of you get to know people, you actually hang out with them, you have beach days, you go on like beach cleanups or charity, like we very much do things for good. And it's such a heartwarming feeling to know that like I have a role in that. And I think that's the best part for me, essentially, working there.
For me, I think my favorite thing about my job is the creative side. I'm a very creative person. And so when I'm able to kind of exercise that part of my brain to really like showcase some ideas and concepts I have creatively, it's amazing. And I think another thing is I'm surrounded by incredibly talented people, and everyone has a different skill set. So like with UX, like, you know, I've met designers who are amazing visual designers, and then I met other UX people who are really good at strategy. Like you don't have to be like, I think like this perfect like designer and like visual designer. And I think I've just learned a lot. Like I'm surrounded by people who've been in the industry for like 20 years, and then some people who've been here for 2. And I think it's just the wide range of people I'm meeting and people from different backgrounds. I think that exposure is really helping me grow. And I think I also really enjoy personally having a personal connection with some of my coworkers. Like I've been able to make some good friends, and yeah, I'm just grateful to be able to learn from others and have that opportunity.
The favorite part of my job currently is I have complete creative freedom with the user experience, or I shouldn't say user experience, with the user interface of our platform, web development, and everything to do with design. So all of the feedback we get from potential customers, I can implement it in the way I see it. Should I say? Yeah. It's not always the case. I've had where I've worked gigs last year and another one this year where you are there as, where for me, for instance, I'm there as a user experience outlet. And a lot of the time you would still get the person that hired you who's never really done user experience or user interface or background of it, who would still sort of pick your brains about something. And so what I'm doing now and having complete creative freedom has really been helpful and very enjoyable.
Yeah, for me, I think I really like my coworkers, as they're like really nice people. So we also have like data team to kind of analyze how the games are doing, and then we flag the data to the design. So like they're like really approachable, and I can ask them for help, and they're like, yeah, nice. And designers are also like ask things nicely. I think like attitude of your coworkers really matter, and yeah, their personality matters. And I think I like my role as in I can do both the creative and more of like the logic things. Because in my previous job, I either do like graphic design or I do UX research. And in this role, because the company is pretty small, so I get to do like 2. Yeah, that's really nice to exercise like different parts of my brain.
Thank you. It was nice to hear all the positives of that. If you guys could give your advice about this, is there any specific characteristics that somebody wanting to get into this career field might need to have? It could be like a personality characteristic or a work ethic or anything like that.
I think characteristic is very much the fact that you are willing to learn. Things are a process and they take time, but it is a very much a constant cycle of learning. So you never really stop. Everything changes all the time. So being able to just want to know things and learn and explore, I think is the best thing. And in terms of just as like a general thing in terms of people, I think being personable is a very good thing to be, because a lot of the time I feel like you're working with people very closely. So you guys will end up having, well, speaking to each other, yeah, sure, but it's a thing of, it's constant and it's all the time. I think that maybe for any job, but it's that sense of like you're on Zoom, like try and like, create a hangout session where you have a conversation with like someone one-on-one in your own spare time, just over lunch, like just trying to make those personal connections, because it's a lot easier to then navigate that way. I feel like if you know the people that you're working with and understand them, because sometimes you can't communicate things like very much properly. So I think having an understanding of who you're working with and their style in which that they work is also very good in terms to help you within your development.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Yolanda said, I think that the biggest thing in this field is your soft skills more than your hard skills. Like anyone can learn to design, anyone can create pixel perfect visual design. But the biggest thing that I've learned for me is communication. You need to be able to rationalize why you're doing what you're doing, to be explaining the pros and cons of why you design the way you do. And it's so important in articulating like why you're doing what you do, because they will ask you why. And the other thing is you need to be able to take feedback, like have like an iron shield. You'll be in a meeting and someone will be like, yep, that is not it. And you need to be like, okay, like that's fine, I'll do it, I can change. So there's, as everyone's mentioned, there's a lot of iteration in design. You're creating new versions every time of the same product. So you need to be willing to take feedback. And then another thing I would say is you need to be passionate about solving people problems. So you always need to put your customer or user or whoever the audience, the stakeholder is at the forefront of what you're trying to solve. And so be excited about that. Be excited about the people you're trying to solve, the problem you're trying to solve, and put that at the core of everything you want to do.
I agree with everything that's just been said. I believe a good characteristic to have is communication. As someone who was very quiet when I was a teenager, maneuvering through work, through my degree, and now in, should I say, working for companies, I have learned that communication is a big thing. And one thing I've learned is everyone wants something to say or has something to say. And if you find a good working relationship with people through communication, you can have a much better work experience. And I think that's been helpful for me, where I've realized that some people who look intimidating on the outside aren't actually intimidating. It's just they're actually very friendly people if you get to know, will not get in work side of things. So I've learned to speak up, talk about things. And as I've done that more and more, I've learned that I have the gift of the gap. So I can get away with a few things.
Yeah, I think to be empathetic, be observant, and have like a sense of for aesthetic, and also detail oriented, especially if you want to do UI. And I also agree that being good at communication and have the courage to communicate and talk to different teammates to meet the expectation is really important. Like be proactive, and yeah, reach out if you have questions. That's really important. Yeah, to be more efficient and meet the project goals.
Thank you, guys. I think those are all great characteristics. We'll move on to a more general thing now. If you could give an application tip in relation to college or anything like that, what would you give to somebody who's wanting to apply for a career? So maybe any helpful experiences or internships you did or anything like that to build your resume a little bit.
Okay, so for me, in terms of getting in, I don't have any, I can't lie to you. But in terms of when you are there, the one thing I would say is gain work experience so you can build your portfolio. Because where I went to university, we didn't have that option of either A, getting an internship, or B, very much having a portfolio being built as we were doing our degree. But when it came to applying for jobs, the one thing that I really needed above anything else, apart from my CV, was very much that portfolio to show my work, show how it is that I think and how it is that that comes out on paper. So it was very, like, I was so fortunate with the fact that throughout my degree, I had chosen to like work with either my friends that were like launching their own applications, their own businesses, and very much using that as a source for my portfolio. because it very much helped me transition a lot smoother than if I had to just start from like scratch once I finished. So that's one thing I would say, is try and get as much work experience as you can, because experience is one thing that really gets you through the door.
For me, I would say getting into uni, just like when you write your like personal statement or your applications, just be yourself. I think that a lot of schools, at least in the US, really care about like your social impact and stuff like that. So really tell your story. In terms of like the UX career, like I would say put yourself out there from day one. Like everyone will say, oh, you're a first year in college, you're a freshman, it doesn't matter. Like for me, I started applying to jobs, going to career fairs from literally like week 3 of college. Like just put yourself out there. You have nothing to lose. I think you gain experience by just talking to recruiters, talking to people in the industry. Another thing I'd recommend is setting up coffee chats with people on LinkedIn. Like I still do that till this day. I just had one yesterday with someone where you just talk to people, learn about what they're doing in the field. Other than that, in terms of applying to UX careers, I'll be very honest with you. There's very not a lot of roles for new grads. I don't know if you experienced this, Julia, but in the US, there's not a lot of UX careers for new grads. So you really need to stand out and you really need to go for it. So each cycle I applied to over like 300, 400 jobs. That's how it is, but it becomes a grind. And then you definitely need a portfolio, as Yolanda mentioned. I was fortunate enough that with my degree, there was like a lot of projects that I worked on as I went through college. So I was able to put that in my portfolio, but don't fret, even if you don't have, there's a lot of like design challenges online. If you just Google, like even like do like a practice Google design challenge or anything, you can make that as a project and put it into your portfolio. And if you ever need ideas for like portfolio pieces, like feel free to talk to me, but apply to jobs, reach out to people. And yeah, like just enjoy, like you really want to be like passionate about it. And yeah, I'm always happy to help with like career stuff. It's something that I'm really interested in, so yeah.
In terms of getting accepted to the college I went to, I can't really say much because but advice I would give specifically for UX design, UI design, or even product design in general is from the very moment you enter university, I believe networking is a powerful tool. Like you don't need to like make friends if you don't want to, but just getting to know people, getting to know lecturers, getting to know people who work around, getting to know other students can help you down the line. And that is basically how I started building up a portfolio, where I got to the point of my 3rd year of university where I made a bit of a network where a lecturer recommended me to somewhere, or someone I met at a coffee shop offered me a job to work as a UX designer. And I would just say networking and communication is a powerful tool to have, especially from the get-go. And yeah, it helped me a lot, and it's still working like a charm after uni. So yeah.
I also will agree that portfolio is a must. I think you can like do projects with your friends, or like in the portfolio you want to show, like pick your focus and you want to show your skills. So if you want to do UI, like show that you can have a lot of like good visuals, or UX for like detailed thought process to showcase that. And or if you want to do like UX writing, like pick projects that can showcase your skills. Because I thought about it so much about portfolio when I was in college, but then after I graduated, like and then my company's right now hiring, and all the recruiters are like they need to see something to show, to like see that the candidate can do the work, right? So you need to have some proof. It's not just there yeah, just an add-on, but like it's a must. Yeah, I also agree that you should start looking for internships, maybe like freshman year, summer, like doing internships if you can, and if not, join like school clubs. Like for graphic designer, I joined like a tech talk club at UW, and I did graphic design for them or branding design. I had a hard time like finding internships and jobs, so I think just smaller projects, like just start small and build your way up, and not and find like a community to have like mentor support and all that throughout the process is important. Yeah, I think it can be like a really frustrating journey, but find friends and yeah, classmates that are going through the same thing with you. Like before I found this my current role, I would join like a UX like community club where like all of the designers are looking for jobs, and then we just share what we learn or just do interview practices with each other, things like that. I think there are a lot of groups out there. Yeah, just join and yeah, find yourself a community.
Shruti, did you want to add something to that? I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I want to add this, and I don't say it to scare anyone, but another thing you really need to keep in mind as international students that we are, the US, there's a lot of visa stuff that you need to be aware of. So like, you might apply to a lot of jobs and they might not sponsor your visa. So going into uni, like really think about visa stuff. Like if you ever want to talk about it, at least from the US perspective, I'm happy to talk about it. But being aware of that is super important from the start. I think that's something that I was privileged enough to have the information of going in, but a lot of my friends didn't, a lot of my international friends. And towards the end, they were like scrambling because you have a very limited amount of days to find a job. Yep. So just being aware is important. And just want to put that out there that wherever you go to college, anywhere around the world, make sure you're aware of like the career, like job, visa rules or whatever it is, immigration rules.
Thank you for adding that. That is really important to consider. So we'll move on to this one. If you guys could go back in time to when you were 16 or 17, finishing high school, what's one piece of advice you would give to yourself, knowing kind of where you are now and all of your experiences?
I'd have to say you get there. You don't know where you're gonna get, but you're gonna get there. You just have to put in the work that you need to, because it's this thing of, I think we always just assume like, oh, like school is just so much work, it's so tedious, it's so whatever. But then you get into the real world of actually being in the world of work. And it's this whole idea of, in order to play hard, you need to work harder. So it's a thing of, they very much go in conjunction with each other, and they're never gonna, like, life is never gonna be different from that. So like the harder you work, the harder you can play. So that's kind of how I feel like it needs to be.
For me, I would go back to myself and be more confident and love yourself more. Like, I know it's not tied to career, but I think oftentimes we're all really hard on ourselves, and that self-love piece is so important. It's always a work in progress for me. It's a work in progress for everyone. So, do things to like one thing that you should do, I think, especially at 16, 17, you might be lost, confused. I think write every day 5 things you love about yourself. Like, as crazy as that sounds, you need to say it and you need to put it out into the universe to really know. Life is a journey. Like, there's going to be peaks and valleys. Like, some days are going to be good, some days are going to be bad. Do not compare. It's hard not to, but do not compare yourself to your peers. Like, someone might be getting a job way quicker than you, or getting into the college that you really wanted to go to, but everything happens for a reason. Like, trust the process. Like, maybe it was like redirection in a good way. And you're always learning. Like, never stop learning. Do things for yourself. Don't do it because your peers are doing it. Like, try to avoid succumbing to peer pressure. Like, just because your friends are like, partying every single day doesn't mean you have to do that, and have like your own morals and values. And then I would say do all the things. For me, when I was in college, early college, high school, I did everything. Like, I was involved in like a lot of different clubs to see what I liked, what I didn't. And I met so many people from different backgrounds, communities, for different things. And I think that was the best thing for me to kind of cope with homesickness or just wanting to see what I'm interested in. Like, I think it's just a really cool experience. So like, do a lot of extracurriculars. It's not just always about academics.
if I would go back to my 16/17-year-old self, I would just tell myself that everything's going to be okay, and you have to put the work in to get somewhere. As someone who was at 16, 17 years old, I was very disorganized. I didn't put a lot of work in, and I only realized later in life that you have to put in the work in order to get somewhere. And even though I am here now because of the work, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, I do believe that if you build a better work ethic as a younger person, it will help you more down the line. And yeah.
Yeah, I will say always try your best. And I know it can be like really stressful to think about like what you want to do for the rest of your life or like pick a career direction. But I will say like to start, just start with your interests, what you like. So I like art or in the creative side, so I explore design, things like that. Just go and explore different options and what you can do. Um, Another advice I would give is to take interview seriously, because I didn't know it was a thing when I was in high school or till like early college. I was like, no, I'm not gonna practice interview. Like what is it even? But yeah, to learn about like how to talk about your skills and to articulate what you have, or yeah, your skills, abilities, and your background is really important. Yeah, practice, find friends to practice interview process, like either for like school clubs or anything like that. Like interview is really important. And yeah, I also worry like so much when I was in high school, or still I'm a pretty negative person, so I worry a lot or get anxious quite easily. But yeah, like you will be fine, and just one step at a time and build on your skills and you will get there.
Thank you, guys. I think we'll answer one of the Q&A questions that someone said. So I'll just read it out. Are there any misconceptions or stereotypes about UI UX design careers or your specific job? For example, they said gender ratios or anything like that.
Ooh, I think, like Sruch mentioned previously, like she's the only woman very much within her team, or like, I think generally speaking within her team. Same thing with me, and I think it's a very interesting place to be in, because you don't see yourself represented, but you kind of have to be the representation that you wish to see sometimes. So it's a very interesting dichotomy, I feel like, being within that space, because you can either feel like you don't belong there because you just don't see yourself there, or just create that space for yourself to be like, no, I belong here. Like people have decided that not even people have decided, but like for yourself, you know that you are good enough to be here. So therefore you should never doubt yourself when you are there, even if the people that are around you don't look like you.
For me, I think that one of the stereotypes or misconceptions is you need to be like a phenomenal like artist, or like have a really good eye for like, creating like pixel perfect visual design. Like I think that that's a stereotype of UX designers. Like personally, like I've noticed that it's something you'll always improve on, and it's a skill that you can learn versus like soft skills. Those are things you can like practice and learn as well. But I think that that's more important. So like you don't need to like be an incredible like visual designer to like really be successful in a UX career. I'm not saying you should have some form of like, creative like background and aesthetic and like, being able to tell, but yeah, you don't have to be like a phenomenal like artist.
So currently in my current role at Clomo, I've had the privilege of a bit of a backstory. I've had a privilege of meeting a lot of experienced designers. One has taken me on as his mentor. Well, he's my mentor now. A few others have also very, very experienced as web developers, product designers, and a lot of them, the biggest lesson I learned from them, which is a misconception I've seen a lot, especially last year when I was working freelance, is it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of the time, you wouldn't want to hand something in or progress with something because it isn't perfect. But a lot of that's the misconception that a lot of people have about UX designers. And especially some people I've worked for would want something to be 100% perfect. And down the line, they realize too late, it can't be. So I think that's a main misconception, that you can just get it done at your best capability, rather than it being absolutely perfect. Yeah.
For my company, we also have a lot more males than females, but I don't find that as too much of a problem right now because like people are pretty friendly, and I get to like speak up whenever I have like ideas and things like that. It's a pretty free and open space. I think stereotype, I heard this a lot, like designers are just making things pretty. I think there's nothing wrong with that, like because I feel like everyone likes pretty things, and the aesthetic for sure like enhance the value of the design. But then I feel like being a UI UX designer is much more than just making things pretty. Like there's like the visual communication aspect. It's so subtle or like almost invisible that people don't really understand or know. So I think to explore the like have a more in-depth understanding of UI is important. And yeah, it's like basic about like organization and all of that come together and make the product a lot better than like when it has like bad visuals and all that.
Thank you, everyone. So we're coming to the end of our panel now, but is there any short closing statements any of the panelists want to say?
I'd say the one thing I get told a lot is essentially there's a whole like saying about an elephant, but it's like, okay, no, it's like, how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. So however big you see like the obstacles like being, or like what you need to do being, is you have to just very much take it one bite at a time. It's like, just first step, don't try and run before you can walk. It's very much that whole sense of you will get there in the end, you will finish the elephant, but have to eat it one bite at a time.
I think for me, I would just say, don't compare yourself to anyone. I think I've mentioned this before in the panel, but everyone's running their own race, and just like, it's hard not to do it, but try to surround yourself with people who are genuinely happy for you, who aren't like, in quotes, like trying to not tell you what they're doing. Some people like, really want to be on top of you, but if you sense that vibe or that energy, like remove yourself from the situation, have boundaries for yourself. Like, you're doing great just the way you are, and just trust timing, trust the process. Like, don't compare yourself. It's not worth it. You're just going to hurt yourself more. And you're amazing just the way you are, to be honest. I know I sound like a Pinterest quote, but like I actually mean it.
Okay, great. Matthew or Julia, anything else to add? If not, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I would just say, or to reiterate again, that communication is a powerful tool, and just going out there and making yourself heard, or trying to build, even though you have nothing at the beginning. It's a start, and it's one step closer to building something big, or where you see yourself in the future. Too many people, especially myself at the beginning, would procrastinate because the hurdle is so big. But as I've lost my words, but my portfolio, for instance, I started with one project, and then two, and then three. But at the beginning, I sort of had it hit a stumbling block where this is so big, I can't start. And just starting and building something's powerful, as well as communication. Going out there, talking to people, and letting your voice be heard is valuable.
Yeah, I think just overall, like be thankful for what you have and just work hard on this journey. And I think I still struggle and still learning to not like base your self-value on what you do, your work or your job, your title. I'm a Christian, so like my faith helps me a lot with that. Yeah, I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to you guys, and yeah, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, everyone. So we have come to the end of the panel now. But I just want to say thank you so much to all of the panelists. I think we had so many wonderful insights and a lot of great advice for all of the students to take with them in their journeys. And thank you to all the viewers who came today. I'm sure we agree that the panelists did a great job. And if the students need any more help with university or career guidance, you can look at our website or check our Instagram. And if you wanted to contact these panelists, their LinkedIns are in the chat in the Zoom. So I think all of the panelists have said they would be happy for you to message them with any questions or anything like that. And yeah, with all of that said, thank you so much to our panelists. This was a great panel. So thank you.
Thank you, Chloe, for hosting. You did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very fun. I enjoyed this.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
very much.